Oh boy, welcome back, Reapers, to the Crypt. Um, I didn't think I would be doing this sort of video, and while this is not the conventional list, this is a bit of that list. These are some of my favorite albums currently, and yes, I know that some of them are just albums I've said are my favorite from the band, period. And I know people are probably like, this guy never really changes his mind. I really do. It just kind of depends. Um, but these are some of my favorite releases ever. Um, this is not my of all time, like, definitely, like, for sure list. Um, But starting it off, we're gonna do with the very first underground album I ever picked up, that being Creator Gods of Violence. With the song Satan is Real being the very first, like, German thrash heavy hitter that I had. I really had no clue what German thrash or blackened thrash was, nor did I expect to get into things heavier than that, as I was pretty scared but also intrigued by it. And you will see, I forgot one, later on, or actually very soon, the album that shortly came after that became a favorite. But I remember I was about in 10th grade, I listened to Satan is Real right before Christmas break. You know, we were ready to leave, pack up our bags, and, I was talking to my dad. I'm like, I just listened to this band. I don't know if you know them. They're called Kreator, like Kreator, and he knew what I was talking about. And a few months go by, and, you know, I later on I'm like, alright, I want to buy this. So I go to my dad, I'm like, hey, can you buy this? And this was when I started getting into collecting music, so I go, hey, can you get this for me? And, he's like, yeah, sure, what is it? I'm like, Kreator Gods of Violence. And he picked this up, and I still have my uh, poster hanging above the wall. No, it did not come with this. And I got a shirt that was actually a tour shirt from 2017 from Amazon as well, with this artwork on it, and like all the dates on the back and whatnot. So I don't know if it was just a generic tour shirt that you see in places like Hot Topic, or if it was a genuine shirt being sold. Nor do I really care, because I think it's cool either way. Um, but I do remember listening to Satan is Real quite a bit, the title track, Hail to the Hordes, Death Becomes My Light. I mean, every song on here is just a trip down memory lane, and this is definitely one of my favorite albums ever. And next up is a pretty popular one, and brutal death metal. And I've stated before that this is one of my favorite albums from this band, and it depends on the day. But that being Cannibal Corpse, Tomb of the Mutilated. I do remember quite a few uh, times I've said Evisceration Plague is my favorite, and while that is true, and it has one of the two favorite songs ever from them, that being Shatter Their Bones, this one has my other favorite, Necropedophile. And I remember, I'd been listening to Kreator, Suicidal Tendencies, and, here we go. Almost forgot that. I remember there being some uh, I don't. It was one of those. I was listening to creator suicidal tendencies, and I remember listening to a lot of Loudwire things that talked about like more extreme metal, and one of them was like the top 10 most brutal songs ever, and it had like Chainsaw Guts Fuck by Mayhem. Um, I'm like forgetting some of the other songs, but one of them that stuck with me was Hammer Smashed Bass by Cannibal Corpse, and I listened to that, and I remembered the when it went into that bass part, especially the drums, not really knowing much about that, I was just floored. And I remember just being like, I gotta get this. And I remember the artwork scaring me with my stepmom seeing it. And, I went to my dad. I was like, hey, can you order this for me? And I told him Tomb of the Mutilated by Cannibal Corpse. Of course, he did the stuff, and I'm pretty sure it takes a bit more than that, but he gets it for me, and 3 days late, like 2-3 days later, I get it in the mail, or he gets it. He gives it to me, and my stepmom just saw it, and she's like, "That's beautiful." And I remember I ran in here, my room. I opened it and went boop, boop, play, blasting that, and that was pretty much high school. Was these two and one other album that I will save up for the trio that pretty much got me through high school. And next up is one from one of my favorite bands ever, and I have the poster behind me. You can't really see their logo. And I've talked about this band before, and I need to get more from them. This is probably my favorite album from them ever, and I mean, I have quite a few favorites from them, but Gormageddon by Aborted. Yep. Aborted is probably my favorite death metal band. Period. But I'm not gonna say that because I've still got a ways to go. But dear God, this album is nasty. The breakdowns are nasty. The production is nasty. I mean, the Saw and the Carnage Dawn are. That's the song that just blew my fucking balls off when I first heard it, and I remember, just being absolutely pummeled by it. And Sea of Cartilage is probably my favorite Aborted song ever. With that sickening, just fucking guitar tone and the sample where he's like, "Did you murder your whole family?" Yes, I did. That fucking sample went way differently. I remember hearing it at school and just, I mean, I'd started with like Retrogore and some of the other stuff that's later, and some of the earlier stuff as well, but I remember Gormageddon was just It's so good. Next up, Hemorrhage with Groom. Yep, more grindy death metal, and this is gore grind from Spain, and I gotta agree with Killbot when he says that this is catchy gore grind, and I want that to sink in with you. Gore grind that's catchy. You don't really hear something like gore grind, a niche genre that is meant to be disgusting, that's meant to make you want to vomit, that just, it's catchy. What the hell am I saying? You know, there's something about this, and I want to pause for a minute. Alright, sorry about that. It's scary, actually. We're gonna move you guys around. Alright, there we go. Alright, there we go. We have, quite a bit, and, it was starting to fall over, but I just wanted to adjust it. But there's just something with Hemorrhage and Groom, especially in Nephrotic Blue and Rectovaginal Fistula. Those songs have somehow stayed in my head forever out of all the songs on here, and I mean, you have cool ass artwork with like Dr. Obnoxious and, you know, the gore photos, and yes, I know that, you know, Hemorrhage is just one of my favorite bands ever. Excuse me. And I'm just kind of praising them as if, you know, there's, I don't know how to really explain it, but like, and of course, you know, you have other amazing songs like the second track. And just, I can't really read those. I don't have my glasses. I don't really want to go get them. But I mean, if you want gore grind that isn't just like carcass worship all the way through, I would highly urge you to check out Hemorrhage. Next up is, I have two variations of this album, and this is another one of my favorite bands ever, thanks to Killbot actually. But I'll explain that in a minute. Nine Inch Nails, The Downward Spiral, and yes, I have the regular, just standard edition. And we have the deluxe edition that I'm pretty sure is also a remastered, and it is a fantastic remastered. Every single part of this album is haunting, and I remember first hearing Hurt that wasn't Johnny Cash's version, and I was like, man, that actually sounds really good, and I thought it was a cover until I realized that this came out years before, almost a complete decade before Johnny Cash did his version. And no, Mr. Self-Destruct and Reptile, nightmare inducing, and I love how you have disc 2, which has other versions of songs from the album, along with like Dead Souls and Closer to God. I think it also has Burn from Natural Born Killers. That's the slipcase. There you go. Open this. Uh, and then we also have their first album, Pretty Hate Machine. Oh my god, this has such addicting choruses and lyrics. I absolutely love it. I mean, you have Head Like a Hole, Terrible Lie, Something I Can Never Have, Kinda I Want to, Sin, Down in It. And, just so good. I can't tell you how good this is. Next up is the one and only album, and it's not even really an album, it's more of an EP, from the one and only Damar, or Demir, however you say it, the war metal band from Lebanon. Oh, how I love this release, and I'm really hoping I can listen to it on a CD or even a vinyl, because you have the one song, and I'm forgetting the full name of it. I know it's like the prejudice or producing of a mass suicide, or some along those lines, where it has the one chorus that goes, "Die, I want to die." When I first heard that for the first time, it nearly blew my gourd off, just how hateful it was and how genuinely spiteful he was towards the beliefs that that country has or had at that time. And holy moly, I highly urge you to check this band out. Next up, since we were talking about war metal, one of my favorite war metal bands, and while this may not be my favorite album from them, this is one of my favorite albums ever. I do need to get my favorite from them though, as that has a lot of my favorite songs, and is definitely would be replacing this, but this is just in placement. This is Revenge Attack Blood Revenge. Yes, I love Revenge. I know a lot of people will be like, I don't seem like the kind of person to listen to Revenge. Trust me, I do. Blood of My Blood is one of my favorite fucking songs ever. And hearing some of these early recordings of these compared to the later versions is just it amazes me how these guys can pull this off, and the vocals just, oh my god, so fucking abrasive. Next up is a pretty big contender for a proto slam band, and I know it's not the one that everyone wants, but Pierce from Within by Suffocation. This album also scared me, as I didn't know what slam was. I thought slam was just Suffocation, the Within Destruction with like Death Wish and Ingested with their first album, and all the re stuff. And I would often get it confused with Gore Grind, and I thought Gore Grind and Slam were pretty much the same genre, so I didn't understand the difference. But I remember hearing Pierce from Within and being like, oh man, I'm a huge Slam fan if this is considered Slam, before I realized that this is not their Slam album. Though it does have parts that make me think of Slam, obviously it doesn't. But you have, of course, Pierce from Within, Depths of Depravity, Suspended in Tribulation, Turn into Enthrallment, Thrones of Blood, that are just catchy, addicting songs. And obviously I'm not gonna complain too much about that. Next up is a pretty classic grindcore album, Repulsion, Horrified, and I don't think I need to say much. I mean, this is probably one of the first grindcore albums that people hear. This being the only release that they have, it is pretty cool that they only had this album. And I mean, the intro to The Stench of Burning Death is unbelievably catchy, but it's amazing how even if you have one album, you can leave a lasting impact, and overall it makes for a pretty good listen. I'm now realizing I forgot another grindcore album, and I don't feel like reaching down there, so I'm just gonna say Terrorizer, World a Downfall. I don't think I need to say much. I mean, you have Fear of Napalm, and after World Obliteration, or whatever the first song is called, and overall just how catchy it is. Moving on, we have some pop, and I know this is one of Wyatt X Tim's favorite pop acts. I think it's his favorite pop act ever, if I remember correctly. And he's the reason I got into this duo, Tattoo. The 200 kmh in the Wrong Lane. I don't think I need to say much, as if you know Wyatt X Tim, you know that this is a really fun pop act, and it has one of the best pop songs ever, and I will fucking agree with Wyatt on that. That being All the Things She Said. And sure, I may have only listened to it since last year, but my god, it does not get old for me. I mean, and their cover of like How Soon Is Now, Not Gonna Get Us, Show Me Love, and a lot of their re-recordings of this is awesome. Next up, favorite album from this band, one of my favorite black metal bands ever, and probably one of my favorite black metal albums ever, Watain, Lawless Darkness. When I was first getting into black metal, this was one of my first listens, which I know is really weird. But I remember listening to Waters of Aim. Sorry. and just being absolutely fucking blown away with just how powerful the songwriting is, and overall it's just a cold, dark world that you enter when you listen to this. Next up is Skinny Puppy, Last Rites. This is my favorite Skinny Puppy album and one of my favorite albums ever. Just the atmosphere alone is disturbing, and I remember listening to it was Mirasol, and just being disturbed at his voice and in A Love in Vain and Killing Game and Inquisition, or just really catchy, but like in a way that's like it shouldn't be. Next up, one of my favorite war metal bands, Proclamation, Messiah of Darkness and Impurity. I love this album, and this should definitely be in your collection if you are a war metal fan of any sorts, because you have amazing songs like Wrath of the Apocalypse, uh, Sepulchral Carnage, Tyrants from Desolation. This is a catchy as fuck war metal album. Please go listen to it. More war metal. Bastille Warlust with Vengeance War Till Death. This was the album that pretty much solidified the genre for me, along with Revenge. Obnoxious, but what can you do? Oop. This has such a... I don't even know how to really describe the feeling that you get when you hear this. I mean, the riffs will just stay in your head forever, and it's an album that never gets old. Next up, Carcass, Symphonies of Sickness. This is my favorite Carcass album. Of all of them, and I mean, it can switch between this, Necroticism and Surgical Steel, but most of the time it is Symphonies, especially with the song Ruptured and Petulance. Holy hell, I've never felt more disgusted, and while some may consider this more death grind, I consider this more gore grind than Reek. As Reek, while yes, it is considerably the first gore grind album, and I have no problem admitting that while this does have a more death grind feel to it, it also has just as many fucking songs, and it has catchier riffs, and it's still very sickening to listen to. Next up, I was talking about this album earlier, and this was the last, or I was referencing it. Suicidal Tendencies, How I Left Tomorrow When I Can't Even Smile Today. Yep, this is the album that and band that pretty much is either these guys, Creator, or Cannibal Corpse. When I first heard this album, it was during a part of my life that I really, really want to forget, as I was going through so much and I felt alone, and this album was my escape. From Trip at the Brain, which this album definitely makes you take, to Pledge Your Allegiance and the title track. Oh, I just can't get enough of this. And sure, the self-titled album will be another favorite. Pretty much anything from this band is a immediately I will listen, I don't care. This album has so many memories, from good to bad to terrible. I will always cherish listening to this in high school, and that's one of those things that it's an album that I could be in a death metal mood. I put this on and my mood will change quickly. Next up is one that I know a lot of people don't like, but him with Razorblade Romance. My god, I love this album so much, and I still want to thank my friend, who also happens to be my ex, for getting me this, as she didn't have to do that, and it honestly is one of the best gifts I've ever received in my life, as it has some of my favorite songs ever, like Join Me in Death, Poison Girl, Right Here in My Arms, Razorblade Kiss, Bury Me Deep Inside Your Heart, Heaven Tonight, Death Is in Love with Us. Oh my god. Please, guys, if you don't like him because you think that they're pussy music, just listen to this. It's so good. It it feels like a soundtrack to what I want a relationship to be like. I want to be able to sing this to a girl and just swayed her. Sounds so cringe, but it's true. Next up is a pretty big album in Swedish death metal, Entombed Left Hand Path. Now, of course, I don't have the original, and I want one. See if I can hear a difference, but my god, every song on this is perfect, and I cannot blame anyone for thinking otherwise. This is so good. Oh, and I can't even be mad if you say this is a top 10 death metal album, because it took me forever to understand why people said that, and now I understand it completely. Next up is one that I showed, and I've been listening to this a lot recently. This is Forbidden Tune with Templum Emporium. This is raw black metal that, yes, it feels like it's just worshipping at the altar of other raw black metal bands like Black Solace and Spectral Wound and shit like that, but this is just amazing, amazing stuff, and I would highly, highly recommend it. Put out through Morbid Chapel Records. Just go listen to it. Next up is one of my favorite, like a top 5 album of all time, Aglock the Mantle. I love this album, and the fact that I got it for Christmas a couple of years ago, I about started crying because I thought I would never be able to find this on CD because I could, everywhere I went, I couldn't find it. And the song in the pale shadow, or in the shadow of her pale companion, excuse me, is so fucking good. Ah, please listen to this if you have not. It is so atmospheric and it is perfect for cold weather. Next up, Atheist, Unquestionable Presence. One of my favorite tech death albums ever, and for good reason. This is a band that not only helped me during, again, the time that I never really wanted to think about or don't like thinking about, but it's an album that has catchy riffs and I mean it has lyrics that stay with you, like in Incarnation's Dream, I believe. There's a part where he says, "Don't dignify a false spine in the sky, reroute your path with a blinking of an eye." That, I don't know how that is something that I felt like I should take to heart, but I did. And I remember last year I saw them with Cynic, which, yes, Trace in the Air is one of my favorite albums, and I forgot to grab it. But there you go. You know another one. I got to meet Kelly Schaefer and got a photo with him, and thanks to my amazing dad for taking that photo, and seeing these guys for a second time was an honor, and the fact that this was the first band I ever stage dove to, and the fact that the bass player and Kelly both picked me up smiling and got me to stage dive. Oh, and when I was crowd surfing, I had my Suicidal Tendencies hat, and Kelly was just like grabbed my hand, sort of shaking it, and oh, such a wonderful dude, and I cannot speak the praises of this album enough. Go check it out. Mother Man, Enthralled in Essence, and The Psychic Saw. Oh, and the fact that it was also dedicated to, I'm forgetting his name, and the anniversary of his passing just recently happened, so I actually listened to this. It was I believe, what was his name? I'm trying to find his name. Calvin. What was his name? Was what is his name? Come on. Roger Patterson, I believe, was the album dedicated to him. Yes. It says it on right under the disc. The tray is dedicated to Roger Patterson, and I'm sorry that took a minute. I forgot that was there, but my God, such a good album. Next up is one of my favorite brutal death metal albums ever, and I know Many people would agree that this is a great album. Dying Fetus, Killing on Adrenaline. My favorite album, depending on the day, is either this or Descend into Depravity. Or on occasion, either Wrong One to Fuck With or Reign Supreme, but it's usually between the first two. Now, this was when I was first getting into brutal death metal. I had heard Wrong One to Fuck With, and I backtracked and I listened to Grotesque Impalement, obviously, and I was like, alright, that's cool, but do they have anything else? And I saw this, and I saw the name Fornication Terrorists, and that song stuck with me. I was listening to that for literally weeks, and oh, I don't know how I I don't know how I got away with listening to that, because that was such a oh, awesome song. And finally, we're down to the last two. Dystopia, Human Equals Garbage. This is my favorite Dystopia album. One of my favorite crust punk bands ever, and for good fucking reason. I mean, you got catchy songs, and this was a album that, like Killbot, kind of made me question my social views, and or not question, but challenge them, as we had songs like Stress Builds Character, Hands That Mold, Broken Shell. Um, the um, those are just some classic fucking songs, and so many people kind of, I don't know why, but the people that listen to Dystopia because of TikTok, because I know TikTok ruins a lot of shit, piss me off, because they're not listening to an album and truly understanding the lyrics. As when I first listened to this, I was like, God, what the hell? And uh, finally, is one of my favorite black metal albums ever, and I was just listening to this. And unfortunately, my dad did not like um the 10th song, which I'm not gonna even try and pronounce. This is a Kitsa with Goetia, Goe, Goe, Goetia, something like that. Goe, there you go. I know this is one of Wyatt XM's favorite black metal albums, and I understand why. He's the reason I actually got into this band, along with the Metalhead box because of the shirt. But oh, this is raw black metal that's so fucking good and infectious. And I never thought I'd say that about raw black metal, but and I love the naturistic photos, and this is just black metal that I understand why people praise it so much. That said, there are plenty of albums I either didn't show because I don't own them, or I forgot to take them out, like I mentioned. And yes, I know that I was unprofessional and all, but that said, thank you all for watching. Thank you for subscribing. As always, keep it grim.